We've talked about not expecting supports. Of course, we are going to ask for them. Of course, we will be knocking on different doors so we could be favored with these supports, but with productive projects. And in the irrigation module, there are 4 legal actors. One is the preservation and conservation of water. The second is an association that is giving free technical assistance. We also have a financial institution where our members are given preferential rate credits plus 1.5 translated to an actual rate. We're talking about less than 10% in an annual basis in that company. We also have the equipment, the machinery, and we give special importance to those activities that have as a purpose to save water. We have also laser technology to level the water, because if we have a level soil, then we can get water savings. And we began to produce our own wheat seed. We've been 10 years reproducing our own wheat with all the processes, with certification and everything that is implied in this NICS certification, with the cost for the producer, with a competitive advantage. We could generate that seed and put it available to our members. We have a third company that it's about an assurance funding constituted in 1997. And at the end, the credit represents a risk. And for this reason, we thought it was convenient that the producer could protect himself for biological and weather phenomena that could leave them in bankruptcy. And this assurance funding is getting the protection of the association. And it's managed by the own producers. In 2001, we organized our 4th institution, a cooperative for the agricultural consumption. In this cooperative, what we do is to consolidate the purchase of fertilizers and seeds in order to manage them and to submit them to our members with a competitive advantage. Also, we get the crops from the producers. And at first, we mentioned the main concern of the producer that is trading it. So we are adding services, we are adding links, and getting into the system and the chain that include all those services that the producer lacks of. So this last part of the conservation has taken us to consolidate important agreements in the industry, where all the facilities are for getting production. The same happens with white corn and sorghum. This has been a process that is slow and long, but it is a very brief. I do totally agree with the doctor here that we've been able to match with the government. We try to interact to show the authority how capable we are for delivering good results, and that we can be accountable for anything at any time. I believe that this is a clear example in terms of irrigation models, and also for units it's possible. It's just about opening the doors that the producers open the door so we can know about new technologies, organizations, and everything implied. Please, Dr. Marcos Oviedo, would you talk to us? Well, I will try to be very brief and going through a series of concerns of what I was commenting at the beginning. I believe that it is also worth analyzing a very complex system in the particular case of our land, and the rural Mexican society has an enormous diversity. I've had the chance of going through the entire country, and I've seen producers all around the territory, and the ideas, the mindset are totally different, and the characteristics of producers in each area are not only linked to the economic activities but also tied to the environment, and that diversity give more complexity for a program such as this. So I would like to reflect a little bit on some of the points that we should foresee in the future for this program. The change of generations. Everything is changing. Women are more present in our land, and that is impacting somehow in a very positive sense, having women participating, but negative in terms of not having young people involved in the activities of our farmers and producers. On the other hand, the diversification strategies, as you were commenting during the presentation, the diversification strategies are inherent to the farming culture in the country and in the culture of farmers. If we make a difference between farmers and the people in the land, or producers, we can say that this is a series of different characteristics, but in any case, the diversification has always been there for the time being due to the characteristics in the insertion of the sector must look other ways. The example in England, I believe, is wonderful and is something that we are not taking advantage of. And I would differ from Engineer Sora's opinion that he would not go to an ugly cabin, and some people would do it. They would even build an ugly cabin, and they would work in those spaces because it's a different sort of tourism. So we have a diversity of tourist demand that arrive with certain conditions in mind. So I believe that this diversification has many possibilities. And we saw that also in the example in the morning, that they are selling the labor in the farm, to sell labor in the farm, to take advantage of the others paying for what we are supposed to do. Another situation that I believe is important also includes about having a local and regional vision, not only for the exterior markets. We've got a population that demands food, demands products that are diversified and is growing, and that is not being well served, and we should think about it. On the other hand, we should also be thinking about some spaces more related to what Sedesol is working, that the community vision and the concept of development of communities frequently has not much to do with the market. In the sense of work,
of the concrete work of the development agencies, or of those who participate in these programs, I believe that there are several things that are worth understanding, that have to be understood, and tools that we must be used. The work must be carried out not only with individuals but with groups as well. This is far more complex, the work with groups, than that with people. We must generate these capacities for people, but we must also understand the complex dynamic of a group and how this this becomes a barrier, but on the other hand, it's also an opportunity. This enormous richness of capacities proper to inherent to a group are tools that can enable us to do many things. Leadership. This is also a very broad subject that was mentioned, and I think this is very important to produce leadership. Also, the work that is being done through agencies that I would call alleviation. The process of mediation between everyone involved, between knowledge and the human resources of the land. I believe that one of the most important exercise for local development is generating and transmitting knowledge, which is one of our main challenges. On the other hand, we have communication. As we mentioned, we are being taught how to dialogue, and this has been possible through participation. And as we mentioned in many of the talks here, what we need is trust. If we do not recuperate all these values in the lands where we work with organizations, we could hardly move on. And that's a very important issue that's very relevant. We have to reconstruct all these values. Three more topics. The bonuses to entrepreneurial activities. I think that the education I think that all of our studies throughout formal education is not enough for becoming entrepreneurs. This is a gap that should be bridged and must be talked about. Also, not only having institutions by sectors, but also public policies which must be articulated and brought into sectors. There are two things I believe are very serious, which from the institutions that look out for clients, that people here on the table discussed. We have the formal clients, but then someone else gives a better bid and they change minds. Also, these clients look for bosses. They look places where they can get, where can we get comfortable. And on the other side, we have those who seek rent, those who only look for subsidies, not as a way to follow through. The law stipulates that this should not happen. That this indicates that something is wrong. There must be differentiated and articulated public policies. However, these are usually operation regulations. And if, as a producer, anyone would like to approach this, it's an impressive challenge. Sometimes not even those who draft it understand them. So I think it's important how to level all these tools for producers, for farmers. That is something which may be easily accessible to all of them. If we wish to elaborate rules of operation, we should use them. But if this is so that producers have access to programs, then they have to be way more simple. Finally, access to credit. It was widely discussed how people were subject to credit, but the question I would like to that I wonder, and I think if you are, do you have bank availability at hand? However, there's a great gap in resources, as the undersecretary spoke about this morning. There's not that much offer of bank institutions. So what's the good of all this money if I cannot have access to it? I think it's very important to consider that, and I concur with the need of graduating and establishing schemes to monitor, to supervise, and evaluate. And for this program, we must have a witness. We must know that this will not have other interventions, and we will get purely results from this program. Thank you. Now we're going to have a Q&A session. You're tired, you don't want to ask any more questions? Well, I would just like to say this, if there aren't any more questions. First of all, organizations are basic. They are the foundation to start with. If there isn't any kind of organization, you cannot move forth. If there is a lack of a firm organization, you cannot start entrepreneurial activities. If there aren't enough basis for organization, if there is no leadership, and if people are not convinced of keeping strong in this struggle, then there's no point in this. To me, agriculture is the most important. I think that this is what founds the self-sufficiency of a country. We cannot eat oil or coal. And I also consider that we shouldn't have any commercialization issues. We are not self-sufficient in beans or rice or corn. However, the rotten policies that exist is what is driving us to these commercialization issues. There isn't a basic ground because these requests do not go to, for example, Maseca or Rimbour, to use what the country produces, so that they import at least on a zero rate. And one of the other things that we should look for, and that hasn't been pursued enough, is agriculture under contract, which will enable us to solve these commercialization issues. Because of what we mentioned this morning, there's no use of channeling and piping all the channels to have an excellent irrigation system. If there's a rotten commercialization, we will not be able to face all the commitments. So this is basic. Also, we're often frowned upon because we squander water resources and that the industry is overrated. However, this industry has a starting point, that is raw material, being wheat, corn, or beans. And we believe that the activity that we carry out is of tremendous importance. I do not agree on how the GDP is manifested. If this is only considered, if the GDP is considered only by the production value, however, everything that is involved, seeds, fertilizers, etc., then what about it? What about what happened recently in Sinaloa or Sonora? All those suppliers, all the seed suppliers or agrochemicals, which are the people who really financiate this activity, because credit is basically extinct around those areas. Everything is scarce and everything is expensive. We have only had solutions, namely this 20% here in an organization, as Santiago said, that if you get a credit at 10%, well, maybe it's feasible. And also, it's worth considering diversification. It is very important, not just staying in the agricultural scope. Maybe if this is not working, other things can work, and this can allow us to keep on going and to carry on with your activity, so that farmers here in Mexico are born, are natural agricultures. If they lose, they plant next year, and they lose and they plant the second year, and they lose again and they do it again. And I think that this wasn't taken into account in the NAFTA because they always thought they were going to tear us apart. However, they did not consider that our farmers are natural farmers. Even if they do wrong, they still pursue the next year because that's the best thing they can do. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. I would like to say a final word. Final word regarding what we live, what's our day-to-day as producers in this organization. 18 years ago, in this organization, which I'm a part of, most of the producers had a negative opinion to what an accountant did in an organization as a manager. Us as producers, we know that we can do many things in the field because that's where we were born, and some way what we saw, we learned, and we can do perfectly, along with all the technical aids that we have that are available through us through the different agencies, being Zagarpa or CONAGUA. But we have a weak spot in this, that is administration. This has been a gargantuan struggle in terms of running an organization when one faces all these complaints and who they come from. And this is mainly because sometimes we frown upon the actions that those who serve us take, especially based on the fact that if they do not know anything about the field, why are they working there? That some kind of agricultural engineer or other kind of engineer should be there with a different specialty, but never a public accountant. And today I would like to say that the strengthening and the growth of this organization has been possible thanks to the management and the project vision that have been carried out jointly with all the producers. Us as an organization, we are not very knowledgeable about this.